Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Peacebuilding Community of Practice. We will get started in just a few minutes. Good to see you all here. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Peacebuilding Community of Practice. We'll get started in just a few minutes. All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to give it one more minute and then we'll get started. All right, I think we're going to get started, everybody. So, hi, everyone. My name is Nick Zarowski. I'm a manager for communications and policy at the Alliance for Peacebuilding. Great to be here. Welcome to the August session of the Alliance for Peacebuilding's Digital Peacebuilding Community of Practice. The Community of Practice seeks to provide a platform for members to engage one another on elevating peacebuilding principles within the tech landscape, as well as apply peacebuilding principles and ideas where it's relevant to technology. If you are new here, please feel free to email me and I will add you to the mailing list for the Community of Practice. I'll drop my email address in the chat shortly. So really excited today, we're going to hear from Zander Willoughby and Emily Long of ConnexUs. Now, before I head over and introduce Zander and Emily, I do encourage all of you, if you're new here, or even if you're not, just to drop your name and your affiliation, a little bit about yourself into the chat. Welcome yourself. This is a very informal community practice where we like to get to know each other. So feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. So Zander Willoughby is a communications officer for ConnexUs at Search for Common Ground. Zander is passionate about building connections for social impact, conflict resolution, and sustainable futures. He's formerly a Search for Common Ground youth, peace, and security advocacy expert and a Global Youth Leadership Council member. He previously served as program manager for Plus Peace at the Alliance for Peacebuilding and a Peace Studies coordinator for the Manchester University Peace Studies Institute and Program in Conflict Resolution. Emily Long is a programs officer for ConnexUs at Search for Common Ground and a co-founder of ConnexUs. She is passionate about transforming local action into global impact. Previously, she served as ConnexUs communications officer and as a case manager at HopeWorks of Howard County, a sexual assault and domestic violence center in Columbia, Maryland. So ConnexUs is a global learning, networking, and coordination platform for everyone to collaborate with people in conflict-affected contexts who are addressing pressing challenges. It's a platform that seeks to improve the effectiveness and impact of your work by creating connections and opportunities. Today, we're going to hear how ConnexUs is connecting actors working in conflict-affected areas, how you all can use ConnexUs to share your work, build connections, and amplify your impact, and also learn about additional avenues for collaboration. So without further ado, Zander and Emily, I'm going to pass it over to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. I'm glad that we put basically our whole presentation in the intro, so Nick can just do it and we can go straight to Q&A. It's so great to join this group. I see so many familiar faces, a lot of whom are at the same office as me, a lot of whom as well I haven't seen in a while, so it's really great to see everybody. While we get started, I'll drop the link for ConnexUs in the chat. A lot of this will be easier to follow along on your screen if you make an account real quick. Emily's ready to approve those as we go. So I'll talk a little bit about sort of the problem statement solution that we're headed towards, hand it over to Emily for a bit of background context on ConnexUs, and then I'll do a quick run through of the sort of features, things that you can do on ConnexUs, opportunities to engage, and then we'll open it up. We're more interested in questions than hearing ourselves talk, so I don't know if that's mutual or not. But the idea behind ConnexUs, for those of you who use the DME for Peace platform, which is around for 10 years, ConnexUs is sort of the natural next phase of that. So everything, if you submitted a resource to DME for Peace, it's still there. If you signed up for emails through DME for Peace, you should hopefully still be getting those updates from us. Kind of the simplest way to describe what we're trying to do with ConnexUs is sort of what is the Reddit/LinkedIn for work in conflict affected areas. Sort of where is the 21st century public square to share resources, to discuss pressing issues, to sort of seek help, collaboration, input, etc. Yeah. So basically thinking back to early 2020, sort of the beginning of the pandemic, there were a lot of conversations about sort of as a peace building field, what do we do? What's our role here? How do we adopt in-person interventions, in-person dialogue online? And there are a lot of really great convening spaces all across the field. There's AFP, there's UNOY, there's the conversations that happen, especially in the hallway at PeaceCon, on one side, and then on the other side, there's sort of just discussion out in the open on Twitter. So through discussion forums, which I'll show you in a bit, sort of where can we have those conversations where you don't need to be a member, you don't necessarily need to know people, you can go out into ConnexUs, find ideas to engage with, find the latest resources, events, innovations, and share your own. Emily, I'll hand it to you, and apologies if I covered stuff you're about to say.
It's all good. Hey, everyone. Thank you for being here today. And I'll try not to overlap too much with what Zander said, but it really is integral to what ConnexUs is. But I'll give a little bit of a backgrounder. It was launched in January of 2021 in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So it was initially launched especially for cross-sector collaboration between public health, peace building, and humanitarian fields, and international development fields, actually. So that HDP nexus plus public health in light of the COVID pandemic, and recognizing that we had a really interconnected problem across the world and across sectors, but a really disconnected response. And so the idea was to create an accessible and dynamic platform that enabled people to connect with each other and share the problems and the solutions, the challenges and the solutions that they were encountering in trying to address this. Since then, now that we're about a year and a half in, we have evolved to incorporate other major global challenges such as climate change, youth peace and security, women peace and security, any issues that intersect with conflict affected areas, and kind of putting peace building at the center of those and recognizing the key role that that plays, in addition to the importance of collaborating with all of the other sectors that are addressing issues in the same communities. I guess another thing I'll add about ConnexUs is that from the start, we've had the majority of our users in the global south or outside of the global north. And we really focus on local ownership and transparency. So our entire website is crowdsourced. Anyone can upload a resource, anyone can upload an event, anyone can start a discussion. And the idea is to give everyone an equal footing, everyone a chance to share their voice and in the way that they would like to. Zander will be going over the features in a moment, but for instance, in our resource library, you can upload a PDF, but you could also upload a video or an audio clip if that's how you would like to share your findings or your research. So we just are constantly adapting and responding. And I'd like to throw here now, as Zander's going through the features and as you're kind of clicking through the website yourself, which you're more than welcome to do freely, please let us know if you have any feedback about it, because we're still new, we're still developing, and we're really agile, thankfully. So we're always looking for feedback and always looking to make it better for you based on the responsiveness. It was initially built with a lot of consultations and from a lot of feedback, and we continue to do that as we evolve. So with that, I will pass it back over to Zander to go over the site.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. And since I haven't used Zoom in a while, here's the awkward number how to share screen.
The green arrow at the bottom.
Perfect. Oh, let's optimize. Are we seeing the things that I want to be sharing?
Yes, a little pixelated at the moment, but maybe that will
right.
Oh, no, better. Okay, you're good.
Cool. Yeah, so as Emily said, there is not a feature on ConnexUs that did not have some sort of crowdsourcing element to it. Rather it be focus groups, rather it be interviews, ideas from sort of the community of users to constantly make this better, that we really hope that there's a sense of co-ownership of not only the infrastructure of the site, the features, the things that you can do on it, but especially the content that you'll see in each of these sections. So assuming you've already made an account, if you haven't, it'll ask you to register. You can sign on with social media, or it goes to us, we approve it pretty quick. I mean, the biggest thing I'd say, bigger, and I probably shouldn't say this on a recorded webinar, but I'm pretty sure this is the largest crowdsourced resource library in the field. More than happy to be corrected on that, but it'll constantly be building. That whenever your organization comes out with a new report, an analysis, a briefing, a video, you're more than welcome and highly encouraged to upload it yourself. So you can filter through. Let's see, the Search for Common Ground Kenya team has been doing rapid analyses of the Kenyan elections and putting them up. So you have up-to-date information on what's happening across the country surrounding the Kenyan elections. All the way from there to the latest research, this piece, Beyond Box Sticking, How Conflict Sensitivity Can Shape a More Equitable Aid System. We'll have a Thursday talk on this paper next week. We'll share the link to that in the chat. But to add a resource, you go in, click Add Resource. And it's a pretty quick, title, what it is, author, region, theme. You can upload all of these. If what you're sharing is a link, you can just put it in the description along with your description, and we'll add that in at the end. And I'm sure this will come up in Q&A. Sort of the gatekeeping or bottleneck would be it comes to us. We support on formatting, make sure it's not something fully off the wall. But as long as it's within generally these themes, we support on formatting a little bit, publish it. The turnarounds usually could be as little as 30 seconds. It could be as much as a day. Go over to the collaboration map. Oftentimes, it's really difficult to figure out who to work with where. So the idea with the collaboration map, same as with any feature you'll see on the site, you can always add your own work, your own organization, your own project to this page. Let's say I want to work in Nigeria on Peacebuilding. We can look, okay, here's 7 responses, can pull it up, and then it's pretty quick. Get quick information, and then you're able to reach out to that organization through the platform. ConnexUs discussions, what I was talking about with that public square of sort of we're grappling with this new issue. Maybe it's education, social media analysis, what local international partnerships look like. That the resource or the discussion forum is a place that you don't have to be as up to speed as you would on Twitter, LinkedIn, Reddit. That it can exist here. We can have this discussion for a few weeks. Down the line, if you have another idea, we can come back. And that can be a way to sort of share ideas and innovations across the field. Are we on time? Oh, we're great on time. Awesome. Sorry, I think I froze. Give that a minute. Great. So that covers a bit of when I say what's the LinkedIn/Reddit for work in conflict affected areas. Sort of the LinkedIn side of things. This is where, every time I talk to a communications staffer about this, they get super excited. When you make your account, you can fill out your profile. You can add your social media links, your speaker's bio, the things that you put on social media if you want. That's an opt-in. Everybody should go and listen to last week's Thursday talk. And then if I published sort of work in my name, that would pop up here as well. Next, we have a crowdsourced events page. I know everybody has webinar fatigue, event fatigue, and also it's very much a who's who of, oh, I'm on the mailing list for this group, but I haven't found out about this group yet. So to be able to have this events page, when you're promoting event, you can upload it here. We'll take a random event. That from here, description, title, all the themes, and a quick link to register. A couple of the last few things, same concept for the jobs board. I know there are some really great jobs boards out there. But one nice thing about the crowdsourcing element of this is that sort of as things come up, it can be pretty rapid fire. Submit those there. And then same thing for funding opportunities. So that was pretty quick. The last thing, and what I think this group would be particularly interested in, is these thematic action areas. So we have about 12.5 different themes. And so in each of these themes, it aggregates everything across the site that's related to that theme. So if you're interested in technology for good or digital peace building, you can come here. If it's your first time engaging with that topic, a little bit of background reading, some FAQs, and then you see sort of the newest resources that are tagged in this group. So here's something from AI for Peace and Data for Peace, Search for Common Ground Sahel team, Global Coalition for Youth Peace Security, etc. Also the latest discussions, or the most active discussions related to that theme, and events. So the idea, I'll stop sharing so I can see you all. Each of these, we all know how much work it is to keep a working group going, to have a community of practice. That hopefully these thematic action areas can supplement that and say, okay, this is where we're going to publish our resources. We know it's all right there. Or we can host a discussion that's right there, and then other groups can start to share information across that. Recognizing that I talked at you all for a while, I'll leave it there for any immediate questions, and I can jump into some other features or hand it back to Emily if need be. Very immediate pressing questions.
Just one question I may ask. Is there a cost for the program?
Nope. Everything here is free. That it's very much, the idea is to be a community-owned, community-led, both the content and the infrastructure.
And then the second part is, how is the material protected from, say, third actors and those kind of people?
Yeah, so everything that's uploaded, and Emily, feel free to fill in any gaps that I might have here. everything uploaded is stored on our server. We're using a service called Cloudflare that, apart from covering sort of security concerns, also creates different versions of the website depending on internet speed. So the run through that I just did, we have fairly good internet at the office, so it's the full version of the website. If you're joining from, say, a phone or spotty internet, it'll take out the animations, it'll tone back some of the video, things like that, to make sure it's accessible from everywhere.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Xander, we got a question in the chat
Mhm.
from Lisa, and if you have connection or coordination with the PCDN platform. I also wanted to ask, what is the minimum, I'm sorry if you said it, what's the minimum internet speed that people can access the website with?
Ooh, we haven't tested the edge yet.
That's kind of technical. I was just
Yeah. No, and we have a lot of right now our top user base is in Pakistan, and we have a lot of folks joining from sort of rural niche area and haven't heard too many issues yet.
Okay.
But I really want to test it because I want to know what the limit is. As far as collaboration with PCDN, not yet. Need to send an email there. But also, one thing that I'm really hoping with ConnexUs is that this can be a complement to everybody's work, especially thinking of network organizations. There's no, for those of you that have worked for a network organization, you know how hard it is to stay up to date with a centralized approach to getting information from all of the member base. To say, here's a link, upload your stuff, we'll go in and see it. And then it's not only a benefit to that network organization, it lifts up the entire field, and in a community of fields working across different sectors, working in conflict affected areas, that we all have access to that information.
Looks like we have, Roger, one more question, then I think we can jump to the additional features, Xander.
Thank you, Xander. I was just curious, when you mentioned Pakistan.
Mhm.
So how would that work? Because I am working actually in the region of Pakistan and India and
Mhm.
Kashmir. How would that work? Say, can you give me an example on the ground if a person in one of those regions wanted to access, and what kind of, if you could walk through what kind of options they would have?
Yeah, so the only thing that changes by region is more that dependent on internet speed. I think that's in any digital platform, that's going to be our biggest barrier. Beyond that, it's the same. I think the biggest limitation right now, and something that we're working on in our next round of web development, the site is fully available in English, French, Arabic. We're working soon to figure out, how far can we expand it, sort of what's the limit. But then I've also played with it with a few other languages using sort of Chrome's built-in Google Translate, and it interacts with the site pretty well.
Okay, and can virtual reality, which is one of the tools I'm using to help for looking at what things look like on the ground and how things could look like 30 years down the road, 50 years down the road, using virtual reality to give people a sense of purpose and a sense of vision of what they're striving for. Can that be also connected to your platform?
In fact, we were just, thank you for these questions. We were just talking about similar projects the other day. Let me open up the resource library. So when you add a resource, it can be I don't want to go out on a limb and on what file format sort of virtual reality experiences are, but assuming that it's already hosted somewhere else, you could upload it as a to add the link to wherever it's hosted here. And then we can go in on the back end and add it as a link. One of our biggest, you all should sign up for our newsletter, goes out sort of one big newsletter a week and then a few smaller ones here and there that we go through all of this user submitted resources, events, jobs, funding opportunities, all of that, and sort of pick sort of what are the 4 things that we need to know this week? What are the big things happening in the climate change and conflict area? Just to increase that sort of getting eyes on each other's resources, building collaboration, ultimately leading for better impact. Emily, I've talked a lot. Have I missed anything? I'm sorry.
No, I've just been quiet because you've been covering everything. So no, I think you're covering it. And if anyone has any further questions, please feel free. And as Zander goes through the remainder of the features and maybe some of our things that are coming up, I'd love to throw a question kind of to the audience, which is what kind of challenges are you seeing? And thank you, Raj, for kind of leading the way with this, but like what kind of challenges are you seeing in your work where you're looking for solutions, and any ways that you're seeing maybe ConnexUs could fit into it, or ways that it's not fitting into it in ways that we could evolve to be more useful. And as I'm putting in the chat, emphasis on collaboration and complementarity. We're not trying to replace anything or anything of that nature, but just to add on to the work that's already been being done by all of you and all of your organizations. We'd love to hear about that. So that I will throw it back to Zander.
There's a question in the chat from Naji. Naji, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in months or a year. Oh, geez. About sort of how do we approach Yemen, and for each of these questions of, how do we approach a geographic area? Being a crowdsourced platform, anyone anywhere in the world that's doing something related to social impact in conflict affected areas is more than welcome to participate in the discussions, to submit resources. One thing coming from a lot of work in the youth peace and security area that I've really enjoyed is sort of the lessons learned in the youth peace and security area in DRC. A lot of times are just as applicable in Finland and Canada, the US and Jordan. So how do we sort of scale up that quick access to information, to innovation, to thinking across the field? John?
Yeah, this was in response to Emily's question about challenges that we see in the field. This is kind of trivial, but it's something that I hear a lot. You publish a report and you want to be able to explain to your stakeholders the impact that the report has had. And you know the number of downloads that you get from your own website, but I was wondering, ConnexUs has registered users. You might be able to tell where the report has gone and then try and track down whether it's had an influence at places where it's been downloaded a lot. Is that something that you've thought of or that's already supported?
Ad hoc, yes. We've had cases that, an organization is really curious how well they reported, or how far it went. Downloads, we're able to get that information. It's not something that we have built in sort of quick, but feel free to shoot us an email and we can look it up pretty quick. Another thing, and I'm curious to hear sort of the audience's thoughts on this, especially in the chat. We don't want to do an upvote, downvote system, but we are curious about introducing like a lot of things that you can thumbs up, or at least an upvote, and then I don't know, maybe a media vote, whatever the Peacebuilder equivalent to that would be. So that not only can you sort by sort of what's the newest resources, but also see what people are reading, what people engaged with, what people commented on. Seeing a data science question. I don't think we have a specific thematic action area on data science. But I lump that under either Tech for Good or Peacebuilding, and people can still find it pretty easily within the resource library.
Yeah, and thank you, Eva, and then Nick as well for the question on content. Essentially, yes, when Xander and I go, really, Xander goes in on a back end when resources are uploaded, we do check for quality. On the conflict sensitivity side of things, yes, by virtue of we're also still a project of Search for Common Ground. If we didn't state that before, sorry, we are a project of Search for Common Ground. So yes, we have that kind of evaluation in-house as well. And I think kind of the beautiful thing is if we do have any questions about that or any concerns about that, we can reach out to the user who submitted it and discuss that. So it's not an automatic rejection, so to speak, but a communication, channel of communication that we can use to discuss it further. So hopefully that answers the question. Thank you for that.
Can I jump in on additional and I think it kind of tacks on to that, and I was saving this for later, but I'm just going to expend it now. You know, this is a terrific platform. I think that you can set some pretty large scale goals over a long period of time. My question is, how do you think you can grow this kind of, you know, quality of content assurance, funding requirements, making sure the program is free for everybody who wants to join, if you really want to expand this significantly in conflict affected and fragile contexts? I'm curious what you thought about that.
Emily, do you want to? I talk too much. No? Okay. One nice thing, and if ConnexUs can solve one issue in the field, it's the amount of websites created for projects that don't have long-term sustainability plans. I'm sure probably all of us on the call right now have been a part of a project that created a website and then didn't have a plan for where does that knowledge that we worked so hard on, that we spent so much time, effort, money on, where will that be in sort of 4 or 5 years? So if ConnexUs can do anything, it's to offer sort of a stable, where it funded at least through 2028, have commitments from Search for Common Ground to sort of keep this information alive and nurtured and cultivated in the long term. On the question of scaling, it's very much one of a lot of the sort of user generated content doesn't take a lot of time for us to get from submission to the thing. So if all, I don't know, 50 of us on the call right now, if everybody submits 2 reports, we'd still be able to get those through by the end of the day. Another nice thing about the ConnexUs model versus maybe other models is that there's no saturation point that we need to hit. You know, if you're a network or a collaborative or a coalition or anything like that, you need to get up-to-date information on, you know, a good chunk of your members. For us, we're constantly, the more the merrier. If the Peacebuilding and urbanization thematic action area is a little light, then we know who to reach out to, say, hey, can you submit your resources here? But that's all sort of community driven. Saw some unmutes. Adam, was that you? Oh, never mind, sorry. Nick, I feel like your question had 3 parts. Did I hit that?
No, you touched on all that. I was
okay, cool.
Chat. Terrific answer. Thank you. So.
Thanks.
Any other questions from folks? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask if there's any advice from the group that you see this and you say, like, oh, we tried something similar and this is what we learned. Or if it had this feature, I'd be more tempted to use it more. Anais, can I put you on the spot to read your question since it's recorded, or do you want me to read it?
I can do it. Sorry.
Sweet.
In the share office space, so just got to a closed room. Yeah, no, I'm asking this because I have seen a lot of in our project, like we support small group of participants for a specific initiative, and then we have this request. So like, how can we help them continue to connect? But it might be that they want to connect or discuss something really specific, and maybe also for conflict sensitivity, they might not want it to be public. But I know also you were talking about the sustainability in the past, and we know when we create those small community of practice just for one project, they just kind of die down. So I'm curious. I know the goal for ConnexUs is not necessarily to have like those closed space, but do you think that's something we could do, should do, or should we just encourage people to just use the regular discussion feature? So just curious to hear a little bit more of your thoughts on that question.
Sure, and I can start by tackling it, and Zander can fill in the gaps. Thanks, Anais, for the question. Largely depends. We are encountering this. We've had a few requests now, definitely from projects, to create some closed discussion forums, and fits in well with Zander's answer to the last question about sustainability. This idea of taking the learnings, the knowledge from a group and making sure that they're shared and amplified, and that other groups can learn those lessons too. So that's kind of the push and pull that we have, I guess, of wanting to respect privacy, obviously security concerns as well, and wanting to share the knowledge. So we can kind of balance it out. We do generally recommend, our first recommendation is the public discussion forums, if for a sustainability perspective, if for the collaboration aspect of other people being able to chime into the conversation. But if there are privacy concerns or security concerns, we're exploring some ways of either anonymous contribution or password protected contribution. And then from that point, ideally, when these conversations are happening, we're encouraging there to be outputs that we could then share through our resource library, share through a Thursday talk, ways that we can, if the discussions do end up closed, that we can share the knowledge that is taken from there. So we also hope that ConnexUs can amplify and find some new ways to share something that might be a 26-page report. How can we make that into a 2-minute video to really share the key findings? So hopefully that answers a bit of the question. And Zander, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, we're always going to be pushing for as much knowledge produced that we push it towards the public side of the site. Yeah, no, Emily covered it. I'll answer Liana's question from the chat real quick, and then we can hand it to Chip about sort of is this events for job post. What happens to job postings after the due date is done? We're actually leaving those up so that they're still accessible. Just because, at least personally, I've gotten to the day before a job interview, realized I forgot to save the PDF of the actual JD, and I've been scrambling to find it. So we've been leaving them up for now, but anytime if you submit something and you need an edit or you do want to take it down, just shoot us an email. We can do that. Chip, good to see you.
And you would think after 2.5 years of this, I would know to unmute myself. Liliana, I think it was, has a post about they're having a spot for journalists, which sparked my question. I'm working almost exclusively on U.S. domestic issues. And so we take that with a grain of salt with a question. But one of the values I can see for this tool is as not simply a database for our field to use, but for two sets of people outside of our field. First being journalists who, we work a lot with a group called We Are Harkin and with Solutions Journalism, who are always looking for constructive stories. Have you thought about first, how do you get this out to those communities? Some of us can help if you want to do that. And then second, are there people developing similar tools in the other? I mean, I'm working a lot on economic issues in the US, race issues in the US, et cetera. You could add other issues to your list. Are there tools like this being developed in those other issue spaces? And if so, how could you work with them? Because when we when we hired a new executive director at AFP, our mean was developing the field. And if that meant looking inward, that's not what we wanted to do. We want to build a field so it can go outward. And so again, this is a hell of a tool. And if I had $1 million, I would give it to you right now to do what I just asked you to do, because that's about what it would cost, I suspect. Now I'm going to mute myself.
Emily's giving me the look to, okay, fine. No, these are really good questions. I think on the journalism front, in my interview for this job, Jack and Emily asked sort of, have you used ConnexUs before, blah, blah. I said, yeah, I was using it when I was writing op-eds to pull it up, sort of what are the resources that I need, what are the reports that I could be citing to sort of get out there. And I think that was a surprise to them. And so like when you make something like this, especially a crowdsourced platform, like we have no idea what people are going to do with ConnexUs. So that's super exciting and terrifying because we'll have to figure out how to fix it, down the line, if need be. But that is definitely a goal that it can be a spot, not only for sort of the resources to say, okay, how do I get up to speed on what's going on in the Sahel? Or how do I get up to speed to the point in the chat about what's happening in climate change and conflict, but also that you have access to the profiles of all of the members who fill it out to say, okay, who do I talk to, in Nigeria, working on peace building in this group, boom, there's 15 people that I can reach out to. That's on that side. Emily, do you want to fill in anything there before I jump into?
No, sorry, you're covering it so well.
Okay, I'm sorry. We do this every presentation. It's a bad fix. On the sort of how many times in the peace building field have we heard the phrases like outside of the usual suspects or outside of the bubble? And so many of our approaches are sort of organize the peace building field and then try and sort of pull people in or like push from outside of our circle. One thing that I like about ConnexUs is that you really have to search to figure out that it's sort of housed at the largest peace building organization. You really have to search to know that a lot of the people that built it come from the peace building field, that when you look at it from first glance, it's just work, social impact, and conflict affected areas. Whether you're working on water issues, infrastructure, development, human rights. And so when it comes to that outreach, it's fairly easy to get a hold of most of you on the call right now. It's a bit harder to do that interpersonal outreach into the other fields. Emily, there's a line from Jack that I'm trying to think of that answers that in like 2 sentences. I'll message him after this. Lita.
Hey there, thank you, Zander and Emily. I just wondered if you, like, when you think about how this digital online tool is enabling collaboration, are there examples that come to mind where, perhaps unfamiliar people have gotten together or new partnerships have been formed? Like, do you hear about things that demonstrate what it is that you're trying to achieve here? Because the conversation is going through the different functionalities, but maybe if we had a sense of like, what could that lead to and how can that meet our needs, it could be helpful.
Sure, I'll jump in first with a bit of a pitch and a throwback to Influencers for Change, which is a project we held, network we created last year. It was essentially, we put out a public call for influencers, digital influencers, people who had over 1,000 followers on their accounts and were using their platform is for good, for spreading positive messages and having a positive impact. Again, at the time, it was a focus on COVID-19. So we got about 150 applications from around the world, selected 40, and then we selected 20 of those 40, and we distributed small grants for them to implement projects of their own. We gave them the space to create a project that ideally addressed the COVID-19 pandemic, but also if it intersected with another issue, that was welcome as well. So with all of that, in the end, they had 10,000 euro in total to work with, and the 20 influencers all had their own projects. I will gladly share the link here in a bit if you want to review any of what happened, but we ended up creating a network of people who were in Kenya, Nigeria, Iraq, Lebanon. I'm missing a couple countries here, but they ended up creating their own network. They ended up getting in touch with each other and trying to connect some of their initiatives. So someone in Iraq was saying, how can I connect my organization with what you're doing here in Kenya? I work on digital security over here, and I know you're working on gender-based violence, and how can we connect those two issues? And so it created this immediate network of folks who were connected. And then as influencers, the change itself was amplified across their social media platforms. Other people showed interest, again, from other countries, even within the countries, where communities were created in that sense as well. A couple of those influencers ended up building their own nonprofits, and we continue to be in touch with them and really just see relevant locally led work at its core. So that's just one thing that I would plug real quick from our Influencers for Change experience that was run through ConnexUs.
Mine, I have the analytics for the site up on another monitor pretty much always. I think anybody who's works in communications knows the struggle to not tie your self-worth to how many dots are on that map. But one beautiful thing I've seen on multiple occasions, it'll be about 5 o'clock DC time. I'll see one user in Yemen and one user in Saudi. Or I'll see somebody in Pakistan across the border into India, or I'll see somebody in Israel and in Palestine that are both on this public square for peace building at the same time, and probably don't know that they're both looking for resources on building a better world. That one, as we develop ConnexUs, as we make it more interactive, as we get that muscle memory for doing these discussions, that sort of the people are already out sort of on this collective platform. So how do we sort of build those threads? Time for probably a couple more questions if folks have it.
Zander, Emily, if not, are there any last features you want to run us through? Or have we touched on everything?
I think we touched on all of them, but maybe sort of a general pitch of sort of, we know what it's like to work so hard on a report and then not to have people read it, or to work really hard on a cool event and not get the numbers that you hope for, or to have a really cool event and then not get sort of the people listening to the recording. So one thing that we hope with ConnexUs is that we can support on that you wrote this really great report, you submitted it, we'll get it out to our email list, which I think is 6,500 people right now, as sort of academics, practitioners across the field. We can get connected with other people through the thematic action areas and in the space. Let me share my screen. Lena's asking about language. Okay, I'll show for the site and then go from there. So right now in-house, offer French and Arabic. This is definitely a growth area for site. We're starting our next round of development sort of this week, next week. It goes through, it gets most of it. Sometimes you have to refresh the home page through there. Yeah. Through to Arabic. Not always the best, but it's always getting a bit better. As in this case.
Yeah, and this is another element we're constantly working on and improving. So feel free to give us feedback and corrections if you see a translated version. And on the question of emails, we don't currently have our content translated to French or Arabic that we disseminate regularly, but that could be happening down the line. So thank you for that point. And I could tackle Mojasola's question. One of our thematic action areas, or suppose 2 or 3 of them, cover the design, monitoring, and evaluation aspects of programs. So we keep them separate. So if someone's looking for evaluation and not monitoring, they can cut between those 2. But yes, those are thematic action areas that are on our site, and happy to connect with you further if you'd like any more resources around that. But thanks, Lena, for your question, and Mojasola as well.
I'll leave kind of maybe a penultimate closing point to give Emily the last word. Sort of what makes knowledge legitimate, what makes a resource useful, what makes something impactful. That there are so many, is conflict research only relevant if it's put in a Western academic peer-reviewed journal? Is it only helpful and useful insights and information if it's in a nicely branded PDF? One thing that we want to do with ConnexUs is that sort of take what we know is good knowledge, what we know is helpful to everyone else in the field, and to sort of lower that barrier to entry, lower that bar for sort of what's good enough, that if people find value in it, then that's a place that it can live. And I think that through continued sort of sharing the knowledge that all of us on this call produce, sharing these resources, these lessons learned, that it only gets better and better and helps each of us.
Thank you so much, Zander. That's terrific. Can I ask, so I'm going to send a follow-up note after this, just to the community of practice mailing list. Is it okay if I just CC both of you in that? So in case people want to have follow-up conversations and continue this on, they can connect with you. Okay.
Absolutely, please do.
Great, wonderful. Well, thank you. And let me just end with some light humor. Zander, you've been a saint, because for the past 3 weeks I said, Zander, can you put this on ConnexUs? Can you put this on ConnexUs? And I just learned I could have been doing it myself the entire time. So what I'm taking away from this session is, Nick, set up an account so you can put AFP things on ConnexUs. But thank you, this was terrific, and thank you to everybody who attended as well. We appreciate the questions, and very interactive session, and great feedback and insights. So thank you to all. I will send a follow-up. Yes, we do love the story of change. I'll send a follow-up note to the community of practice with the recording of this session in case you want to watch it in the future. And do stay tuned. We will have a session next month. Actually, the day before International Day of Peace. September 21st is the Day of Peace, and September 20th is when we will meet next. So stay tuned. And of course, yes, join the upcoming Thursday talk. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all soon.
Thanks.